Buenos días amigos, bienvenidos a un episodio más de Chain Reaction Talks. Mi nombre es Laura Mayo.
Yo no sé quién soy, güey. Soy Itzel Cadena y amigos, no saben el gusto que me da poderles comunicar a la persona que tenemos el día de hoy para entrevista. Laura, ¿qué opinas?
Miren, yo creo que es algo de lo que hemos hablado repetidamente en el podcast. No soy tan fanática del mundo del CrossFit pero solamente hay dos personas en el mundo del CrossFit que me llama mucho la atención por su mentalidad, por la manera en que tienen, que están demostrando hacer las cosas y cómo entrenan y toda esta filosofía que hay detrás de todo ellos como atletas, y es Tia y Matt Fraser. Y pues por consecuencia, pues sabemos que su entrenador es, pues ya saben, ¿no? Entonces cuando Itzel me dijo, estábamos un poco, no lo podíamos creer y pues por favor,
de la emoción.
Itzel, presenta a nuestro invitado.
Pues nuestro invitado del día efectivamente es Shane Orr. Es nativo australiano, esposo de Tia Claire Toomey, la campeona por 4 años seguidos hasta ahorita.
Uh-huh.
Y además entrenador también por los últimos 2 años de Matt Fraser. Estamos haciendo esta introducción aparte para que ustedes puedan escuchar posteriormente la entrevista. Solamente voy a decir la primera pregunta porque no se grabó y ya automáticamente nos vamos al resto de la entrevista, ¿ok? La pregunta fue, ¿en qué momento te decides a dedicarte al 100% como coach, a ser pareja con Tia en cuestión también de equipo y no solamente quedarte como que en la banca apoyando, sino realmente meterte al 100% en su carrera? Esa fue la primera pregunta y estaremos escuchando su respuesta y todas las demás.
Amigos, disfruten esta entrevista. Las preguntas fueron como muy ayuda de ustedes también, que nos apoyaron haciéndolas, y también de pues Itzel, que si yo soy fan, ella es el triple fan. Y pues obviamente ella con más experiencia para hacer este tipo de preguntas. Entonces, disfruten la entrevista y cualquier cosa, déjenos sus comentarios. Muchísimas gracias.
Suscríbanse al canal.
I've always felt that I've had a lot of desire about fitness. Like I think early on, even when I was playing rugby back at school level, I remember being so more invested about the process. And I know that word gets thrown out there a lot, but I generally was. I was more curious about picking the coach's brain and about why we did what we did. And I felt that question, I've always wanted to know the answer to that, especially and as we progress through the years, but it always comes back to that. It's like I've always just wanted to be more involved or understand the process better. So early on in school, obviously, I played a lot of sports as well, but as you would have read or would have heard, but along with my learning education of being in the mines and being a mechanical fitter for that, on the off time, I would go work in a gym, like a Globo setting gym format. So that's where I would understudy or have mentors just teaching me a lot about the coaching realm or more about the personal training route. So I did a lot of extra studies about the generic certificates to become a personal trainer, which gave me the foundations of what I started with, and then I just built through from that point on. Does that make sense, Itzel?
Yeah, for sure. So cool. You started working at a global gym, but were you a coach or were you in the sidelines? Were you just receiving people?
Yeah. So honestly, I started at the front desk. Like I was the guy what swiped their keychains or whatever it was that they had it on, and I'd swipe them, greet them. Hopefully they have a good day, and then it just stemmed from there. So then I went from front desk to then looking over someone's shoulders, a mentor setting, and then then I started working one-on-one, and those one-on-ones were friends, like it was family and friends. It never starts with someone out of the outside that bubble. So then it just stemmed from that. But then and then how Tia and all that came, like when and then Tia's journey, it all came about. It was never a plan, like, you know what I'm saying? Like we never we never had a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan to go, hey, let's conquer this. It just organically happened for myself as well. And I just kind of always want to make sure that my objective is to highlight or to help Tia progress in a journey. It's never been about like, what can I significantly gain out of this? Sure, I get a lot of satisfaction, especially when my wife's doing really well, like
Yeah, of course.
I celebrate that, but my intent has always been revolved around what can I do to contribute to that success. And if I can, I would love to do that. If I can't, let's find somebody, or let's work out a plan to make that happen.
Of course.
That's very humble of you. I know not many coaches have
appreciate that
that side of you. Laura?
Okay. After your first experience at the CrossFit Games, what did you think and how did you plan to focus on the next season?
Yeah. That's, I had a mixed reception at the first game. It just comes at you so quick. It's like bam, and the weekend's there, and I feel that being a part of that, the first couple of days drags. Like you check in on the Monday, you do the media stuff, which we weren't involved at all, like because there was other big names, or which took a lot of that attention away, which is great, which they deserve. But you're just an outcast. You're just watching a lot of this happen unfold behind you, and you don't want to devote too much energy to that because you're there for a task as well. You're there to compete, but you get consumed by all these athletes, and the ones you see on the social media, the ones on the YouTube, the ones on the TV, for that matter. So you're just so invested in that, and then it's almost you got to slap yourself in the face and go, "Hey, we're here for a task as well." But at the same time, we knew that not every year is guaranteed to be at the CrossFit Games, to be at that World Championship. So we made sure that we try to make the most of it by just absorbing the atmosphere at the back there. And I think those first couple of days is actually very consuming of your time, physically and mentally, so that when you come to the competition, it's just over in a flash. So the first the first half of the week drags, where you're just going through the motions with everyone. You're trying to enjoy it, absorb it, and then comes Thursday, it's over within a quick second. But the experience in itself, it's like a roller coaster ride. It's almost like a whole year in a weekend. And what I mean is there's highs and lows, and you got to bounce back really quick. Not like where you get like a week or two to get over that poor result or whatever it is. You got like 4 hours to get over a poor result and then move on to the next. Or you've got 4 hours to celebrate a cool PR or a success, or, hey, did you see me? I just beat XYZ athletes. Isn't that cool? And I'm like, yeah, that was really cool. Let's see what happens next. Like you're just going through those emotions of just raw excitement. And then the weekend's over. And then obviously Tia had a great result in that. So we're just celebrating, and just so much was left unanswered, but we experienced so much at the same time, which I guess it's just raw emotions of just a big roller coaster ride. Is how I like to describe it.
Yeah, I actually, I remember that very well. And it's so funny how Tia's and Matt's journey started so very alike. They had this first year where pretty much they were just like fans of the sport and just kind of overwhelming, competing with these guys that they were like their idols. Now, going back to 2016, I got to say that's one of my favorite documentaries, more because of the transition that happened. I remember seeing Tia, she was doing great, but mentally she didn't believe it. Like you were seeing that she didn't believe it. And I remember reading in her book that she was so angry when she saw that documentary because she thought exactly that's not me. And I went back to the book, and when she was a child, she had so much support from her parents, and she had this, she was so eager to win that she said, I'm not this person. What changed after that year for you both? Because I know that you were crazy because you didn't want her to experience that ever again. So you said, this is a partnership. This is something that we both need to improve on. What changed after that year?
So this is after 2016, right? So after 2017, because Tia came second twice. So 2016 was awesome, right? Like, you have no expectations. So everything was great. She came second. It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
2017 was like, oh crap.
You're right.
Yeah. So 2017 is like, oh crap. We got to make sure that the first year wasn't a fluke, that you deserve to be here. It was sort of the quest. Now, when I look at that message, what I was trying to convey to Tia, it's not exactly, it's certainly far from what I would convey to today. And what I mean by that is I'm telling the athlete, or I'm telling Tia that, hey, there's parts of me would think that you were a fluke as well, even though I wasn't saying, hey, you're a fluke, let's prove that you weren't a fluke. But in there creates doubt as well by the message that I was conveying. So I had to make sure that, and this ties into 2017. So I had to make sure that we just didn't fluke for that matter. So when we went to 2017 and we had another second place finish, that was rock bottom for me. To see how destroyed Tia was at the end of that just made me, I felt sick. I felt so responsible, and I'm sure she feels the same way as well. But for me, that was it. Like that was the last straw that broke my back, where I was like, no, something has to change. And that's when, we revisited, and I did a lot of, I wouldn't say soul searching, but I would say that I did a lot more understanding of what kind of context or what kind of conversations I'm trying to convey. What's the message? Or how is she going to deliver or receive this message that I'm trying to convey? Even small things, like just even from a cueing point of view of like a technique snatch related, like I want to make sure that I'm conveying a positive, a directful message rather than I'm giving her doubt or I'm leaving her to believe that she's alone. You know what I'm trying to say? So to answer the question, a lot of it honestly came back with stripping it back and then trying to reinvent what I could, and from my side of things, what I can do to better uplift her or to better encourage her, and then certainly to revisit our structure of training, and then to push forward for the 2018, whatever that was. That one, yeah.
Okay. So next question is, what are your first thoughts into making a strategy for a workout?
Yeah, my first thought, so I think this is awesome. My first thought, particularly with coaching or at least programming, as soon as you said that question, I think time domain or what's the stimulus that I'm after. When I mean stimulus, I mean, is it going to be very short and intense, or is it going to be in between, or is it going to be long? I sort of try to break it down into realistic parameters. So for instance, I think about time frame. I always think that it's important to put a metric or at least a time cap on a workout for the most part, just so that I can at least factor in what kind of intensity they'll get from that workout. So I start with that, Laura.
Okay.
Does that answer that? Or
yes.
Did I?
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
Totally.
Sure. Now, how do you measure progress and fatigue? Like, do you use wearables, or do you have some kind of testing in between phases, or how do you do it?
Yep. For fatigue, I look at two metrics. One is a wearable device, and we're going through a series of them and see which one we like. But as long as it's consistent metrics, so, like I'm not bouncing back and forth through an Oura Ring or a Whoop, or I'm not going through multiple devices, I try to consistently use one and try that out. And another metrics is just conversation. Just ask Tia or ask the athletes in the morning, hey, how do you feel? Fortunately, I obviously live with Tia, so I can just see how she moves, right? If she's holding her back, trying to pick up something off the floor, I know what she's saying to me doesn't actually marry up to how she physically feels. So I just sort of observe a lot, and I use that as the key indicator. Metrics on the devices are phenomenal. That keeps me, I can watch trends and track that. But at the end of the day, if the athlete's firing, let's go. Let's go with that. Yes. And what was the other part of the question?
Like, how do you measure progress and fatigue? Like
So the progress side of things, we implement a lot of 8-week, 12-week cycles, depending on the movement. So let's just look at rowing. We implement an 8-week cycle. We'll do some form of testing, and then we'll do progressions to build towards that, and then we'll do a retest. Or sometimes what we'll do is we'll do a workout. We'll have a workout focus. So for instance, leading into you may need to help me here, but the sanction event, which was going to be held in San Diego, West Coast Classic. So West Coast Classic, we knew there were going to be a lot of throwbacks. So what we did was we focused on 2 or 3 regional workouts that we thought would be like maybe would appear at the West Coast Classic, and then we revolved a lot of structure around that. So one of them was that snatch ladder. So we looked at ways that we could, particularly for the men, okay, the top weight is 265. So let's work out a strategy to approach and attack that so that they could be prepared if that was to show up again.
All right.
Awesome.
Test and retest.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Okay. Who has been your greatest inspiration as a coach?
Oh, wow. Like it may sound cheesy, but it's certainly Tia, right? Like the reality is I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her. And I mean that purely, like that's the reality of it as well. But I've been fortunate that I've had a lot of great mentors along the way. And I feel I credit that to the ability of being always open-minded and finding new ways to learn from other people and other disciplines as well. I've read a few books about biographies from coaches and athletes, and I get as much motivation or a lot of inspiration from the athlete as much as I do from the coach. I believe that there's a crazy blend between the athlete has to show a lot of dedication and understand their sport as well. And it's always from their learnings that shape the model of the training as well. So, I look at both of those as well. But if I had to put another character, I'd certainly want to put in our weightlifting coach from early on, which gave us a lot of hope and a big platform, Miles from Australia. He early on, he'd spend a lot of time traveling to our small town to help Tia and myself be a coach in that.
The Commonwealth Games, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So in the Commonwealth Games and for the Olympics.
Yeah.
Early on, he was the first guy that said, "Hey, Tia can go to the Olympics." And we thought he was crazy. We laughed at him, as we would, we brushed it off going, "This guy's just crazy." And then he goes, "No, I'm serious." And then he pulled out and said, "This is the 4-year plan. I can see this happening." And then we're like, right, if this guy's crazy, let's get crazy with him. So we just jumped on this crazy cycle with him, and and he instilled belief, and we felt like we're from a small town, and you just think those things don't happen. You have to move to the city to make those dreams sort of happen. But he said, no, I'll bridge that gap. I'll come to you, and then you just put in the work and I'll match that. And then that's how it happened. But his belief was big for me as well. Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, talking about inspiration, this is a personal question for me.
Oh.
Do you have a favorite book? Like this is like your Bible book?
Yeah, I do. And I think it's actually getting around social media pretty heavily right now. It's that Chop Wood, Carry Water. It's quite thin. It's.
I am going to write that at this
moment.
Yeah,
Chop Wood, Carry Water. But it's more about small lessons. And I think for me as a teenager reading that, I feel that I hold on to some of those lessons, and I see a lot of relevance to that today. I put it this way: if any of my friends have kids, I can't wait to give them that book and go, "Hey, these lessons will fast track you to be a better person."
That's awesome.
Nice.
Now, let's say that you have the power to build the perfect CrossFit athlete. Give me 3 ingredients that you think this is must have.
Right. And then what kind of ingredients do these have to be? Like how detailed do they have to be? Am I talking like I would love for them to be a gymnastic athlete, or I love
whatever comes to mind.
Yeah. Oh wow, man. Right. So I feel particularly with if I was to receive an 18-year-old. Now, if I was to receive the perfect 18-year-old specimen, what would tick the amazing, like the boxes that I think would be like, right, let's go. I haven't even met you, but on paper you sound amazing. Three of the attributes, and I think it's actually different. I don't know if I'm going too far into this, ladies. You let me know.
But you go.
I feel like with men and female, I would want different attributes. So I'm going to go with the female, just given that's where I've specialized a lot in of recent. I would say I would love them to still certainly have a gymnastic background. If I was, sorry, and a disclaimer, this is based off the last 3 or 4 years at the games. I'd say 5 years. I don't know what the shift will be in 5 years from now, but based off the 5 years, certainly a strong gymnastic foundation. And I say that because with women having the ability to do a lot of the high skill gymnastic movements, I would love for them to have their body awareness and their strength from which they've received early on growing up. I find that it's harder for a lady to build up a body strength or body awareness in their later ages. So I need to have that foundation. It's certainly a big thing. And if you look at the games, traditionally, a lot of the females actually come from a gymnastic background. So let's look at last year's workout. The handstand walk one was phenomenal. Like Tia came 5th in that handstand walk. However, those other 4 athletes are like level 10 gymnasts, phenomenal, incredible athletes. So if you start looking at that realm, I would love for them to have an aggressive sport background. This is a perfect world, a boxing background, where they just had those hard interval training sessions. Just they know how to hurt, they know how to fight, and they just hold on, they grit. Just want one of those fighters. And then the third attribute, I'm always looking for encompassing some form of like, not methodical, but very conscious of their body and the limitation. They know when to hurt, they know when to go on that point, but they also know how to dial it back. And I mean that from a coaching point where I can instill trust and go, no, they know when to hurt and when not to hurt. So, I don't know, a good IQ. Can we go with that? Or I don't know if there's a metrics in measurement of intelligence in the sporting realm. But I guess or maybe like a team orientated sport, I think like a hockey, or I'm just trying to think like a team orientated sport, hockey, or some form of aerobic background would certainly be a big benefit as well. Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
I don't know. Too much? Is that good?
No.
Awesome.
Cool.
Okay. What's the main difference you have encountered by coaching athletes other than Tia?
Yeah, certainly that everyone's different. It's not a one fit all model, and I love that about the sport. I feel that getting to know the athlete and their path to the point where I meet them and hearing what they've done prior, I try to dive into that and see how I can use that I use that information to hopefully convey stories or how to put it in context to help get the best out of them. Knowing the athlete in that sense is important for me too. But back to the question, it's that's the fun part, right? Like I don't know if I like the word fun in this situation. That's the process. It's identifying what their objectives and goals are, and it's making sure that you create a plan that they understand and that they want to go there as well. I feel that everyone's on a different, like they're on a different plan when they come to me. But so my objective is to work out what they want. I think I should go back to that. My objective is to find out what they want and what they want to achieve out of this. And that's what I need to focus on. Sure, like the titles and the championships, that's the glory. That's where you get the attention. That's where you get these amazing opportunities with the podcast and stuff. I'm very aware of that. But at the end of the day, I've got to try to remove that from the equation and go, hang on, what do you actually want? I want to make you a better athlete. I'm sure the byproduct is the championships and being on that podium and being a top 10 contender and all that good stuff. But
of course,
I need to remove that and go, hey, this person is screaming for other objectives or tasks, and I want to make sure that I'm delivering for that person. And strategies and timing and just small things, like it's almost their training, their small things like their nutrition and their training periods of when they prefer to train are all different to what Tia would like. So I've just got to go back to the basics and ask them the simple questions. Hey, when do you like to train? When do you want your rest day? Do you have any commitments? And then that in itself is a huge conversation of trying to structure a plan for the athlete. So I think I think if there's anything that's similar in everything I've just rambled, I guess it comes back to communication and just making sure that I understand what they want and not what Shane wants.
Do you have any kind of way to like start goal setting? Any particular way, or just talking around and kind of figuring it out?
Yep. So for me, goal setting's massive. We all got to need, both parties, so the athlete and the coach and the team need to understand what we're trying to achieve here. So conversation, certainly, back to that communication. But what I love to do, every year, for instance, with Tia, at the end of every year, I go, right, give me 10 goals that you want to achieve, and then I'll do my best to make that happen. Obviously, I need her to do the physical work, but so for instance, whatever they may be, and let's just say I want to get 30 ring muscle ups unbroken. I want them precise or vague as whatever they want. I want 30 muscle ups unbroken. I want to snatch at 225. I want to do this, that. Cool. So now I know where her headspace is. So then when I implement plans and strategies, I can go, Tia, you want 30 ring muscle ups? This is why I've implemented the gymnastic portion for this period. It's a progression to get you that. So at the games, if they do 30 ring muscle ups, and let's hope they do, because you're going to be prepared, and I can't wait for you to show that. So I guess on the other side as well, from the coach, I've got to implement or trick them by adding my goals in there as well, like goals where I think can benefit them at the CrossFit games as well. Going, okay, they're going to test you aerobically. I need to put that in there. So yeah, so back to it. Make sure that they give me a goals list at the end of the year, at the start of the season, so that I'm accountable for their goals and vice versa. They're accountable for the goals that they've written, and then we work together chasing them down.
That's awesome.
Now, when you work in a season and everything, do you do it backwards, like thinking about Dave Castro, for example, has done this over the years, or do you try to guess? I'm saying this because I've seen the way your athletes work. I mean, specifically Tia and Matt, you're very smart. You're very smart. Like the thing that I admire the most about you is your attention to detail. And I say this because I see they do things that other athletes don't do. Like, for example, they had like this, I think it was Kelly for the games, the first part of the games. And yeah. I remember seeing you guys were the only ones that actually put a rope around the barbell so it wouldn't move. And it did matter, because I remember seeing Katrin and her barbell, every time that she slammed the bar, was moving all around. And also at the games, I saw Tia had placement of chalk in every stage, and this kind of things that made transition so much easier, that I noticed. I'm a big fan.
I appreciate
of the sport and most especially of the work you do. So I pay attention to this kind of thing. And I'm wondering, how do you put this into perspective? Do you work backwards? Do you try to guess what Dave Castro is going to do? How do you manage to see, what, I think we're going to try to make this as smart as possible, to try to waste the least amount of time. So we'll try to be more efficient,
Yep, 100%. And I think, firstly, I appreciate that. I think it's the finer details as well. It's understanding. I guess that's my job, certainly at the games. I think about what I try to carry, is I try to think about all the external factors. And I've mentioned this a few times, that I've now stopped becoming, when I'm at the games, my job of coaching and then being, implementing everything is done, right? So now it turns into like how I feel is my responsibility is to get them there prepared for the CrossFit games. And once we're at the games, I then turn into more of a caddy, like at the golf, I start thinking about all the external factors. I'm thinking about like their nutrition, their sleep, even the way that we transport to the event. I'm starting to think about the interaction with people, just to minimize that exposure, so they're just not drained. Obviously, hydration is a massive one in the heat of Madison in California. And then the finer parts of the workout, things that because as an athlete, when 3-2-1 goes, and even at the affiliate level, you're like, whoop, you forget everything and you just start running because the workout starts with the run. And then we all have a great game plan until you hear the beat. And then, so I think what I'm trying to do is trying to think about all those external factors to keep it simple as well, so they don't have to think 5 steps ahead. And I learned this pretty early on. We don't think about Sunday. We just think about the present day. And what I mean by Sunday is the podium, like we all have objectives. I just want to stand on top of the podium. Well, that's great. Let's just think about Wednesday right now. We've got a lot of tasks to do right this second, rather than thinking about what we're going to be doing on Sunday, standing on that podium. Now, where were we going with this? Sorry.
No, how do you plan the season? Do you do it backwards or guessing? Yeah.
Yep. So yes, I reverse it. So I find out what events we want to do. I think every year has been quite different with the formats, sanctioned events, regionals, and now we have quarter semifinals now. So every year it's been different, but I try and work out the events that we want to go to, and I make sure that we implement peaks, and like the deloads, the tapers, and all that good stuff. But we don't forget about the main priority, and that's to compete at the CrossFit Games. So from that point on, we just start working back from there. And there's a phase that I stop thinking about fitness, and then like being the primary, like, okay, like remove the exercise science thought process in everything. And then we just start going, right, what is Dave Castro going to test us on? So we start then turning it all about the CrossFit Games and start implementing those style workouts and making sure that we're sharp for that. So there's a cycle for precisely for that. The sanction events and a lot of the sanction events threw a lot of spanners in the work for a large part there, which I loved about the sequence prior to sanction events, the pros and cons. But a large part, what I found challenging with the sanction events is that in the past, when we had the Open, the regionals, and the games, we had the one program. We had Dave Castro programming the sequence of events. And there was a trend, there was a cycle that we saw dumbbells there, then we saw less dumbbells here, or whatever that was. It's almost like a process of elimination. We just did 30 bar muscle ups. So the likelihood of seeing 30 bar muscle ups in event 1 at the games is very slim. So, you can sort of rule that workout or that combination out for the next part. So then that just removes one less combination that I'd have to program for. However, disclaimer, I didn't see that the first open workout would be very similar to the quarterfinal workout. So that he does it again. I've never picked one of his workouts, and he always keeps mixing it up to where, because people, there's like you think by now we would see a trend of what he would do. Like I always look at that from a process point of view. Like I've got trends where people, like the athletes, start identifying what I gravitate towards, like a number sequence or something like that, or a trend. I'm yet to find Dave's out. There's never a trend. So he keeps mixing it up, and I credit him for that. But to go back to the question, in the past we had a process, you could do a process of elimination, and you can work with those parameters. But when you introduce the sanction events, now we had, I think, 27 sanction events or 17. Anyway, a large portion of sanction events, we had new programmers. So now that we could go to the Open and we could go to a sanction event and have the same workout. So now when we start programming for the athletes to peak at a sanction event, I still have to cover the workouts, or I still got to be conscious that, hey, even we just did it 4 weeks ago on the Open, we could find ourselves doing it again at a sanction event. So I've got to make sure that they're more all round or constantly fit in all aspects when we go to the sanction event period, and that I've got to carry that on to the games period. And I don't know if I'm going into it, but what I loved about the games, the older format, is that it allowed the athletes' growth in parts of the sport to grow faster as a competitive athlete, because they got to test themselves or build to compete and peak at a higher point come the games. But because we had the sanction event, they had to be very fit here, but the peak isn't as high as it is. Anyway, what I'm trying to say, back to your question, is yes, we I don't know if I'm going off tangent, but yes,
No, don't worry.
I work it back and make sure that we're conscious of the objective, and that's to compete and be prepared at the CrossFit Games. I factor in the sanction or the semifinals, making sure we're prepared there, and that we have a plan that we all understand what we're trying to achieve. And I will say it changes. Like even having not knowing if they're competing in the week 1 of the semifinals or week 4 of the semifinals, that changes a lot of things as well. Like the taper period, when I'm going to implement the deload 3-4 weeks prior to that. So a lot of these information is still unknown, and I'm navigating it just like all coaches out there. We're trying to navigate and wait for more information, but still keep the athletes believing that, hey, we've got this, but we're just navigating it just like everybody else.
Of course.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, next question. And what's the biggest challenge about being a coach and a husband to your athlete?
Yeah. I will say for Tia and I, we've been doing this a lot longer than we've just been, dating for that matter. Our relationship for the most part has always encompassed, or it's always involved some form of coaching and relationship as well. And I'm fortunate for that, and I've said it many times before, but that's the reality, right? We want to find a partner, or we want to find a significant other that we want to spend every day with, right? And I'm just fortunate that I get to live that, and it's really cool. We get to travel the world, we do all that stuff. It's phenomenal. We meet amazing people. We get to do awesome opportunities like this. But on the other side of things, yeah, it does wear out and it gets a lot thin, and we got to find a balance and making sure that our aggression is for good. When I say aggression, I mean that when she's in the trench, she's training hard. I know it builds up, like it's very tense, and she's got a lot of expectation on herself, and then she feels this perceived pressure that I want her to do XYZ amazing stuff as well. And we just vent out sometimes, and it's more of like a lash. But I know it comes from a place of just frustration at that point of view. But I got to make sure that energy is for the good. And so I guess it gets tough at parts through the year, but it also strengthens us as well. And I don't know if this is a cheesy or a lame way of looking at it, but I look at the challenges that we face, but we face them literally together. Like some of our biggest challenges are together, and they encompass our work together. So our quest to get into the CrossFit Games as a couple and standing on the podium was one of our quests to work together. So having those stories or going through the motions of the roller coaster with her together are very special to me, and I'm sure to her as well. But like I must credit her. She's phenomenal at this. Like if I give her constructive criticism, it's water off a duck's back. We'll go to the gym, whatever it is. Hey, Tia, do this on your next set because this is why, blah, blah, blah. She takes it very well. And as soon as we walk out that gym, it's husband and wife. And you know what, to be honest, we very hardly speak about CrossFit outside of the gym. And I don't know if it's because it's our profession. We revolve around that. Obviously, when we train and we do a lot of that, we compete. And I love these podcasts because it's my way of talking about it as well. But the reality is we don't come home and we start talking about, hey, such and such did Fran and got this time, or hey, did you see the local affiliate did this and that? It's amazing. Honestly, we just switch off and we just, I guess, like to think about, it's almost like if your job was being an accountant, you don't come home talking about numbers all night, right? So I think we're in the same realm, and I think that's our way of monitoring our exposure or reducing our exposure in the field. I think that's very important to switch off. But yeah, I credit her because she's phenomenal. I feel that, I know that if the shoe was on the other foot, I was the athlete and she was the coach, I couldn't do it. And that's where it would break down. Like, I know that how much I love her, I don't think I could have her as a coach. So she's the one to credit there.
Wow.
Well, I don't know you personally, but I think you both are. I think you're a great team, and I think that's what that's why you're so successful right now. It's because of that understanding that I think I see in all the videos that I've shared, that I've seen about you. That's what I see. That's what you kind of like reflect to all of us, is that great communication and exactly that great way to switch off and on, to know when you're the husband and when you're the coach. And that's got to be difficult. But I mean, the fact that you know each other for so long, that's got to help a little bit.
Yeah. And like I was saying, I feel that for most part, it's been our relationship. So I don't know otherwise, like I'm naive. I don't know what it's like where we go to work this way and that way, and then we meet up at 5 p.m. at night, and what do we talk about? I haven't really lived that life. Yeah, sure, we were in the mines at one point, but during that time in the mines, we would still come home to prepare ourselves for training for CrossFit or for another discipline in sport, So I think it's always been a part of our relationships. It's a part of it.
Awesome.
That's awesome. And now, talking about this season, what do you think about this season's changes?
Yeah. I think firstly, from like the low-hanging fruit or some of the early initial thoughts, and I understand that we're the 1%ers, or we're in a different bracket or spectrum, but the financial opportunities are certainly a lot less. At this point last year, fortunately, Tier had won 2 sanctioned events already, and that was a large portion of income. Like that's the reality of it. It also allowed Tier's brand, or allows the athletes to have further exposure. For the first 2 events, there isn't any exposure, and I look at this from an elite athlete's point of view, and the longevity of that. Right, they need to make some form of revenue in order for them to commit to being a professional athlete. Because I don't take the word professional lightly. Like it's an amazing achievement. That's when you become at the top of the top of the field, right? When you can do this as a full time because you want to and for whatever reason. So I look at the first 2 events. The Open, yeah, sure. I love the concept of the Open. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's awesome to know that us 3 here have a chance of a stepping stone towards going to the World Championship or the CrossFit Games, right? So I think that's phenomenal. I think that's such an important value to it. Then the quarterfinals, based off this year, it was, I won't say a small production, not at all. I know that they put a lot of effort and a lot of money and resources into it, but the exposure for the athletes, there isn't any. I know the CrossFit Games puts it out, but for the reality, when you're looking at marketability or you're looking at sponsorship opportunities, it's not really eye candy for a brand to go, cool, that's a great, marketing opportunity for them. So I guess half the season now is not desirable for brands to be associated with. Yeah, I'm sure for the CrossFit it is, because they can, and great, this is business as well, but they can then look at it and go, okay, this is how many people are doing our first and second initial competition, get involved because we have a great, massive community, partner up with the CrossFit Games. But on the other side of things, on the other side of the fence, we've got the athletes going, well, half our season now is we can't use that for marketing tools to grow our brand or grow sponsorship. Now, and I'm very fortunate because we've had that foundation of many years and the sanctioned events and the success of the games and all that. So I know we're fortunate, we've got that foundation. But I still feel for what it would have been like for us 6-7 years ago, if this system was applied, and how much harder it is for us to thrive. But from the games, from moving forward to the games, yeah, sure. Like that's the pinnacle, and I haven't lost sight of that. As long as the quest is to find the fittest on earth, we're going to be invested in that, right? That's where that championship, or that's where the fittest on earth being crowned, that's where the credibility, or that's what you're working towards. As long as that's the objective, I'm going to be so much invested in that. But fortunately, after the CrossFit Games, I believe they're going to put on, other brands and like Rogue and Wodapalooza. They're going to put on phenomenal events where there's certainly a chance to top up the account for those, or to be exposed to those other competitions as well. From a programming point of view, I think it's great. I feel that the first 3 workouts allowed everyone. I know it would have been very hard to navigate with how the world currently is, with people in their house, to people completely living a world where there's no such thing as COVID. So I know that there's a broad spectrum there. I feel like it's easy to criticize, but I'm sure if I was in that position like Dave, I'm sure that it'd be a lot more difficult to understand the pressure from the business and making sure that we get people to sign up, and then having to program for that. And then on the other spectrum, creating an elite platform to get to the CrossFit Games. I'm sure that's a challenge in itself there. So it'd be easy for me to criticize, but based off how I perceive things, I'm willing to play their sport. I play their rules, so I'm not gonna pretty much bash the hand that feeds us. I'm under that illusion as well. So yeah, hope something in there was educational.
How about in the quarterfinals? What do you think about that programming? I mean, I know we were talking about this with another coach yesterday, talking about the quarterfinals, and the main opinion was because the quarterfinals got the 10% of each region, right? So the 10%, for example, in North America, it was a lot. It was like 7,000 male and 6,000 something female. So one of the things that came to mind was the quarterfinals. They were pretty good workouts, but too tough if you talked about 7,000. If you go back in the leaderboard up to the 6,000. In my case, for example, I'm a coach, and I have some athletes that went on to quarterfinals, and some of them that couldn't even lift and snatch. Yeah. So talking about that, what do you think about the programming? Do you think it's right? Do you think maybe it should be less than 10% just to make this kind of test as hard as it was? Or what's your take on this?
Yeah, I feel that they're certainly going to learn a lot from the feedback. Top 10% is such a large pool of athletes. I get that. And I get from the business point of view too, that's what they're trying to achieve, trying to create the brand and grow that. I'd love to hear what you think of the workouts as well, but I think from a coaching point of view, or even from an affiliate point of view, but for me, I think it's certainly challenging to find the right balance of programming. I feel that, sure, the 60 GHDs is a lot. I'm sure that came up a lot. But for me, if it wasn't GHDs, it may have been something else, and we'd be talking about how that was, like an oversight or an overlook or a poor judgment in movement selection. But I look at it that fortunately, the people that I'm encompassed, or the guys that I'm working with, have that foundation. I know that once they put a strength protocol, a strength movement like the forearm front squat, when you do look at the larger pool of the top 10%, that traditionally there's a lot of strength athletes that do that. So for instance, like even if I was in that top 10%, like that would have been like one of the better movements, I would have thought. So, because my aerobic and anaerobic is in there, like the strength portion is there. I look at it this way as well, that traditionally at the Open and now the quarterfinals, we really tap into 2 spectrums traditionally, like a gymnastic background or an anaerobic state. Very hardly, you can't go beyond 20 more. Sorry, it's unrealistic to do more than 20 minutes. So those aerobic athletes don't get to shine until they get to some form of sanction event or at the games, right? So that's why that tricky combination is. That's why we see a lot of running at the games, is because they couldn't do that up until that point. So now they know how much of an important test that is for running. They have to do that at the games where they can facilitate that. So I guess coming back to the Open, the quarterfinals, their parameters or their testing at the moment is very skewed towards anaerobic and some form of gymnastics, some form of strength. We know there's going to be a biased strength piece, which we understand, right, from a coaching point of view, or find that all overall athlete. And we know there's going to be some form of test of gymnastics, whatever that may be. For this one, I'm sure it's just like the rope climbs, I guess, and the strict handstand push-ups, what wasn't significant, possibly enough to separate. But what we never do is see the aerobic side of things. So I feel for those athletes not getting that platform to show their fitness. And that's why you can train precisely for the Open to make it to the quarterfinals. And I've always thought that, and again, bias, like our objective is to make it to the CrossFit Games and to do really well there, right? Like for the most part. So I've never understood gaming it to get to the next stage. I've always thought when we first started, I was like, well, there's no point just showing up at the games and showing up to regionals and then getting exposed very hard at regionals and going, well, that was sucky. Like that was, what I'm trying to say is, at the moment, the programming for is biased towards a few protocols or a few areas, and it doesn't allow to give you the full range for the athlete or to encompass the full range. And that's just because of the limitation of the space in that. So, it's very hard. I'd love to know what you think as well. Like, how did it go from being a coach on your spectrum? What did you find? Did you enjoy it?
Oh, I did not enjoy it. Well, if you're talking about if you're talking about doing it, but no, for me it was okay. But the thing is, I don't have really, like, I have like probably 2 elite athletes, and all the other are not elite. Actually, I had three that qualified for quarterfinals that were not expecting to qualify. So it was like first experience. They were very happy about it.
Yeah.
But I think it was a very mental test, because they were used to the format of the Open, of having the opportunity to maybe repeat. And this pressure, they tried to emulate a competition. So you can't repeat. You have to, put all the cards in one workout and kind of like try to do the best way possible, if you know how to order them, so you're not too tired for the next day, and try to do all this. And I have also a lot of athletes that are not professionals, so they have to work. So we had to manage the times. And we had to be like, all right, I'm going to catch you up at 5 a.m. I'm going to open the gym just so you can do the quarterfinals, and try to manage, they had all these schematics of the logistics, how the video had to look like, and all that stuff. So it was very crazy. And I think it's going to help, at the large part, I think it's going to, well, for my athletes, and personally, I think they got to think if they actually want to do this. Because like, for example, for the GHD, I had one female athlete that actually ended up crying because she was so frustrated. She did not move as well as she expected. She was very good at the rope climbs, but I mean, she didn't experience going to the rope climbs after so many GHD setups. So all of this kind of like, it's a mental process. Right now, I think she's very motivated, and she's like, okay, I know that I need to work so much more. Right. So I think it's a good test, but I think, I don't know. I don't think it's 10% the right amount. I think it's too much.
Yeah.
Whether it is too much or the tests were too high. Because in the end of everything, I mean, like, for example, Tia is going to win whether you give her a wall climb or you give her muscle up, So I don't think it's got to be that hard if you choose a field that large. It doesn't have to be that hard, because you can use pull-ups or you can do muscle-ups, and the same person is going to win because they're fit in the whole spectrum,
Mm-hmm.
So that's the only thing I thought it might be too hard. Either it is too hard for this amount of people that you chose, or maybe you got to make it a little bit easier if you want to do it, like, from, as you say, from a business point, and choose this large amount of people. That's my
Yeah. And I think you made some great points there. But are you gym owner as well?
Yeah.
So I guess from a gym owner now, what did you get out of it? This is what and I mean this in a sense that I think this is what CrossFit need to work on. Other than the passion in which I hear coming from you as a coach, like the care for the athlete, it doesn't add more value to your gym though. When you're coming in and this is my concern, and this is why I praise you for waking up at 5 a.m., opening up the gym doors. That doesn't add value to your business. That's just showing the dedication which you're going to for your community. So that's credit to you, but that's my problem with the opening entire, to be completely honest as well. Now that we're going this route, here we go. But I feel that that's the problem or the bridge that they need to correct. It's the quarterfinals doesn't add value to your gym, and I think that's what needs to be worked on. You're now opening your gym up on 2 weekends a year, like the open, yeah, you're doing that for 5 weeks, doing extra hours, but that doesn't actually generate any more money to your account. It's just showing your dedication. I feel that, and this is what I tried to convey early on as well. And fortunately, I'm in a different spectrum, but I haven't lost sight of being an affiliate owner either, is that you're putting in a lot of extra effort for the open, but it doesn't equate to more money either. And it's just fortunate that we've got so many phenomenal people that care about their communities and generally just care about the growth of CrossFit. And I feel that the quarterfinals particularly doesn't add more value, just adds more work. Your value, you've been dedicated from day one, is what I'm trying to say. It's not that. Anyway, I just feel that there's got to be some form of kickback almost to the affiliate owners or to those coaches that open up. And I'm on a different spectrum. I'm very fortunate for that. But again, I haven't lost sight.
Of course.
I think it's also great, the bridge in the gap, by having whatever percentile, it allows now the 1%ers to, like the top games athletes to have a focus, right, to stepping stone. But on the other spectrum, it's like those 10% or those fringe athletes have a new reward or a new focus going, well, I'm currently 15% in the world. My next year's objective is to be top 10%. So I think it's allowing that growth. But you're right, maybe the percentages need to be revisited, or maybe the programming may need to be factored as well.
Yeah, for sure. Laura.
Okay. What tips can you give to those athletes who made it to the semifinals, like in that theme?
Yeah. I guess exactly where we're at right now, right? So understanding for everyone besides North America, for the most part, and Europe, I guess, know when their sanctioned event is, right? So I think creating a structure or plan is paramount, right? You got to know what you're doing or prepare for that, so you can be prepared at competition. I feel that that's very obvious, but you'd be surprised that people go in there and just go willy-nilly and not understand. If you have a coach, challenge your coach. I'm sure they would love those questions to know that they're trying to understand where they are and what they can do to understand the path. So challenge your coach. Ask them the right questions of where you're going and what the path is. If you're doing it on your own, create a structure. Sit down and understand when your competition and what you're trying to achieve out of that. I feel like that's just the low-hanging fruit. And the tips around it, I would certainly just start looking back in the past events and see traditionally how they program and understand what kind of measurements or kind of trends you see in the programming in that format as well. That will help identify that as well. I feel that with an 8-week or 6-week, depending when your event is, that's a lot of time to get certainly a lot fitter and sharpen that edge or sharpen that blade so you can be more prepared. So I think it's more about structuring and understanding what you're trying to achieve. I think it's very broad, not knowing the athlete, but setting expectations as well of what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah. All right, cool. Now, with this pandemic right now going on, do you think it hurt or it helped athletes' performances?
I think, and not having much thought into this, I think it did. I'll give you some insight on our perspective. So last year when the pandemic hit, it expanded our season for Tia and Matt. It went all the way into, when was that, September, whenever the games was. I didn't even know anymore. So it dragged out that season. That felt like a nightmare. That felt, for me as a coach, trying to then put a taper, a deload. Oh no, we're not peaking now. We got to extend it another month. Navigating through that storm was pretty tough on the athletes because they were ready for the games 3 or 4 times through, right? To the point when they got to the games, it was just, let's get through with this. This year, knowing what we're walking into, I feel like we're on the other side of it now. It's like, we know it's coming to the end, or, you know, fingers crossed, I'm knocking on wood that it's happening. We know it's coming to the end, but when is it going to happen? Are we having to shuffle around and move things over so that we can have fans and spectators at these events, or in-person events, more importantly? So navigating through that, I feel like we're on a different spectrum of trying to understand where we're at. For the performance or the athlete side of things, I think it's allowed us to reset and then prioritize a lot of internal growth as well. Like, I feel that a lot of athletes have had the chance to go, okay, a lot of my events got shut down in the off season. I can rebuild and work on the foundation or the fundamentals of the game. For performance and money, obviously that hurts a lot of athletes not being able to compete and do what they enjoy. I feel that everyone trains so that they compete, like, you know, for the most part, competitors. So they're not having that. I'm certainly sure that would suck. And more so for the affiliate point of view. I mean, like, sorry, from a member point of view, like, just that not having access to the gym for most part would have been a mental burden for them. You know, that some of it, a lot of people, they're out, you know. So, I mean, there's so many areas of small groups that I'm sure were impacted from it. But I guess from the elite point of view, if used correctly, it was a good growth or reset. You know, and forced people to go, okay, just chill out, let the body recover. Let's reset, and then let's find out what we got to do next year.
All right. Laura.
Okay.
Just 2 more questions.
No problem. It's okay.
I'm going to go for our community. So what should the Latin community be focused on to reach the level of American and European regions? Because we are like trying to reach
a little bit
behind.
Yeah. And I must apologize. I'm naive. I'm trying to be more broad and understand all the spectrums. I feel that one year it's very continental, the next year it's very inclusive. So I'm just trying to navigate through that. I'm learning the North American field a lot this year. Anyway, for me, it's not getting involved or wrapped around that, comparing yourself. So what we did early on, we compared ourselves to the best at the point in time. So we're understanding when Tia started, we weren't wrapped. I was more engaged about, okay, what is Camille and what is Rich Froning doing? What have they done that we haven't done? And again, it's almost like the reverse engineering of how we structure a season. I almost looked at it at this point of view and go, what are they doing? And I come back to that 10,000 hour rule of, have you heard of the, 10,000 hours to master your craft? I almost looked at it that way. And I remember having a conversation with Tia and go, Tia, for every one pull-up we do today, just know that they have done hundreds on top of you. So I almost thought, right, volume was the answer, right? To accumulate, right? We need to match them in how many repetitions so that we're just as good at them at those movements as they are. So I thought volume was the answer. And then I went through the spiral and understood, hey, intensity and working out the path of what the format looked like. And what I mean by the format, the season looked like. Understanding, okay, the first quarter of the year is associated with the Open, making sure that we have a great foundation there. Cool. The next part is the regionals, making sure that we have a good progression there. Then the games. And that's why I love that format, because there was, for me, the growth of the athlete allowed them to be at their best or heighten their ability towards the game. With the sanctional format, which I didn't like about it, or one of the areas, the con of the sanction event format, the athlete did a lot of this, the limbo period of the growth, right? But the games allows them, the plan is to test the athlete's heightened performance at the games, doing those crazy things at the games, because there was a path for it where they could do that. So sorry, back to the Latin guys. So what I think it needs to happen is obviously coming back to structure. I'm very structured orientated, or very methodical in that sense. And I think that's been a very important key element. And don't get me wrong, we lived in a small town in Australia, out in the bush or out in the sticks, where we felt very isolated as well. We created plans, or we created small goals, not to get encompassed, not to get swamped or overwhelmed by what North America doing. We just got involved with what's our current community doing? How can I be a key player in that? Cool. When we got that, we then just grew organically and go, okay, in this state, we just want to be competitive within this state. And we work just on that. And then, cool, let's do the regional setting. Now this is the country. Cool, let's work on that. And then we built on that, and we built and built and built. And I think a lot of our questions started revolving around internal, what we can do to be better athletes, right? And I feel like sometimes, and this is where I was coming back to the volume question, is I was too engaged on what they were doing and not what we were doing. So that's what I'm trying to bridge, and that's what I was trying to get back with that. So I think identifying where you're at and creating goals that would suit you. And now don't take shortcuts. What I mean by shortcuts, don't shave your reps. Don't do the movement 90% and know that wouldn't be no rep. Discipline yourself. If you did a no rep, do another wall ball. That's where I credit Matt and T. Every training session, they're their hardest critic. It doesn't matter how hard, doesn't matter how fast you go in training. It only matters when you do it when you're at a competition floor and you fall back to the level you're training. It's so many times that we see guys that are phenomenal. They're beasts on Instagram and social media, or through portions of the season. But then when you get them to the games, and then they've got someone watching every movement of them, and then you see them break down. Anyway, keep it small, keep it simple, focus on yourself internally, and create a great network around you that believes. I feel that there's maybe the environment where they feel that they have to be successful globally or recognized at the Open. You don't have to be great at the quarterfinals. I've seen it before. Like Tia finishes 400th or 180th in the Open worldwide, but then finishes second at the games. It's not, the quarterfinals and the Open don't equate to who you have to be at the games. There's such a long bridge between that. Don't get encompassed with the Open results. I feel that you guys have phenomenal talent if they could be at the games, right? So I think that you guys are doing really great things. Just know that what happens at the Open is not a metric or an accurate metric to compare someone at the games. Yeah.
That is awesome. All right. I'm sorry. I was writing the phrase that you just said because I loved it. You fall back to the level of your training. That fucker's gone to the wall. That's awesome. I love that phrase. All right. So last question. What recommendation would you give to a coach starting their career?
Yeah. Particularly with CrossFit, I would say keep it broad as well, right? There's a lot of amazing resources, strength and conditioning, coaches would have been involved in many other sports. I've always looked at them and been intrigued about that. I've always been gravitated towards human performance and what athletes do. I look at NBA, I look at the NFL, rugby league, rugby union back home, soccer, what they do there, the Tour de France. I've gone into this rabbit hole now with Formula One and looking at their strength and conditioning protocols. To keep it broad, there's so many lessons that can be taught there and utilized for CrossFit what haven't been tapped in. But I'd almost challenge them to actually study and understand more about the communication and how athletes identify that, And for me, sometimes a lot of it's just reassurance and understanding to believe in myself as well. Like there's a lot of pressure on the athlete, right? But I'm sure if you ask the coach, they put a lot of pressure on themselves to allow that athlete to elevate, to be at their best as well. I heard a coach once say it as well, and I forget who said it, so I'd love to credit him, but you made a good point. This is from the coaching point of view as well, that when the athlete succeeds, they get all the praise. When the athlete doesn't do well, the coaching gets all the criticism.
Totally.
And that's the reality of it. And I know that well and truly. And you know, I embrace that because that's the reality, and I get that. But I think if the coach realizes that as well early on, it allows them to know what to expect, I guess. Yeah, it's a learning.
Of course.
That is awesome. So thank you so much for giving us this little bit of your time. Really, I'm so honored to have you here. We are so happy that you accepted. It's very humble of you to accept my my invitation.
We are
appreciate that.
Super fans.
You have no idea.
You have
how
no
crazy
idea.
I was
Yes.
when I got your message. You have no idea. So thank you so much. I know you have this new program, Proven. So where can they follow you at?
Yeah, if you want more information, please just head over to our Instagram. We've got all those links associated with that. I feel that Instagram is probably our fastest way of interacting these days. We certainly got a YouTube as well if you're into that space.
Totally.
But more importantly, ladies, I just want to thank you guys as well for allowing me to be on this platform. You guys are doing phenomenal back in your region there, and you know I love seeing the content and the growth as well. And you guys are contributing directly towards that, and I'm excited to see what you guys have in the future.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. And okay, you know, guys, thank you for following us, subscribe, and you know all that good stuff. Goodbye.
Bye.